The Mariners just finished up their last series in the Oakland Coliseum, winning 2 of the 4 games in this series. Joe and I are going to quickly go over all the games in this series, and we were at 2 of them. So maybe we'll give a little bit of insight there. We're then going to talk about where the Mariners are at in the standings as they do find themselves 4.5 games back at the Houston Astros. What does that mean for the rest of the season, and could they find themselves in a wild card spot come the end of this month? We're then going to talk about the Ryan Divish quote, or I don't even know what you call it, but the Ryan Divish interview where the possibility of Scott Service finding out that he was fired came from a leak from a member of ownership. That's wild. We're going to talk about that because then we have spots, and then we're going to talk about the St. Louis Cardinals series coming up starting tomorrow on Friday. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 119 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav Network, available on all your favorite audio platforms. Be sure to give us a 5-star review if you do like listening to the show. And this is going to be the Nelson Clay episode of the podcast. Joe, I just got back home a few hours ago, and I'm ready to continue to talk about this baseball team that loves to break my heart. How are you doing?
I'm great. I hope there was a little bit of a connection issue on your end. It felt there was a little lag coming through when you were talking, so hopefully it sorts itself out. It was largely fine, I will say, largely fine. Feeling good, right? The first 2 games of the series, not good, but you weren't here for those. At least you were here for one of them, right? The first one I wasn't like super thrilled about. The second one that we went to, much better time, much better vibes. I think there's a video on your phone where I'm screaming on to 2025 in the first video. That's how we were feeling after the first. Like, again, completely 2 different teams, I think, that played the first 2 games of the series and the second 2 games against the A's. I hope you enjoyed your time at the Coliseum. I have, I'd say, like, fond-ish memories there. It was weird, like somber, watching the final out today. It's kind of like, wow, that's it, huh? Like, that's just, they're done. No more Oakland, no more concrete jungle. Whether or not they're, like, how well Sacramento does it, I have no idea what, like, is in the future for the Athletics as, like, a franchise, but I can tell you one thing that is for certain. Never take any bets on them, ever. Unless it's like Brent Rooker anytime home run or like Shea Langoliers walking off the Mariners or anything like that. But plenty of other bets you guys can find with BetOnline. Thank you to BetOnline for being a sponsor for the Hit It Here podcast. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your #1 source for everything football. And the final part of the MLB season as well. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. And if you think you know your stuff, you can get in on the $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week. That will give you a chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. Head to the website today to get on the action. BetOnline. The game starts here. Before we get into game 1, people that we saw at game 2, Colton, just want to give a shout out to some of the peeps. David saw us at both games. Very, very exciting. Pleasure to meet you, sir. Joey talked to us after the game a lot. Awesome to meet you. Toma got a bunch of people signing an autograph baseball. Very, very exciting. Joel snapped a picture with us. Toma also snapped, like, anybody that took a picture with us, please post it somewhere so we can find it. Joey sent us the ones that
I can put you on the board.
Exactly. Guy in an A's hat that was walking by that noticed us that didn't stop because whatever. Yeah, and Enchanted Mariner Mojo is a Mariners fan. Didn't catch your name. Other guys in City Connect jerseys that walked past also didn't catch your name because, like, you're just walking by. Whatever. Great to see everybody. Cole and CJ in the final game. It was a pleasure to meet you boys as well. But Colton, this first game against the Athletics was just another punch to the gut. But a nice punch to the gut because it was their 69th loss on the year. A walk-off from Langoliers in this one. Gilbert gives up 4 earned, strikes out 9 over 6 innings. Wasn't like his sharpest, but, like, you know, they're in this game because the offense also got 4 off of Osvaldo Bido in this one. It's just they couldn't hang in there at the end. Austin Voth, first batter, just gives up a towering home run walk-off. 11 strikeouts in this game from the team. Like, I don't know. The game 1, it was one that you could have won. They didn't. Oh, well.
Yeah, Cal Raleigh in this game had 2 RBIs. Justin Turner had 1, and Julio had 1 as well. But in terms of the offense, that was really it. Victor Robles went 2 for 4 in this game. Overall, Logan was all right. It wasn't anything special, giving up 4 runs, but yeah, the 9 Ks was something nice to see from Logan. And it was honestly kind of the same story going into game 2, Joe. A walk-off from Langoliers in game 1, followed up by another walk-off, the first game that I got to see in the Oakland Coliseum here. This one from Seth Brown at the end of this game. And I think that watching Luis in this game was something that he wasn't bad per se in this game. But frankly, the offense, once again, just wasn't good enough, and the Mariners do fall in game 2 as well.
Yeah, it was 7 innings of 2-run ball by Luis, only 4 hits. 2 of those runs were solo home runs. The thing that's been his bugaboo, I think, is just giving up some bombs. Good thing there were solo ones in this one, or else it would have been a lot further of a differential here. But not a great game from Randy Arozarena. JP got his, I think, second hit since coming off the injured list in this one, but does just go 1 for 4. Not a great series by him by any means. Julio checks in with another hit, but Mariners only had 5. They struck out 10. 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Just not a lot of chances, and ultimately that does sink them in this one, and they can no longer win the series. A day where every single team around you in the standings within the division, whatever, also lost, would have been a great game to win. It was close enough, just can't do it. And then as Mariners fans, we all know, right? What they do best is take all their runs and score them in one game. They just take them all and put them in one game. The most runs I think I've ever seen in person by any team. Doesn't matter. Like, I went to the Modesto Nuts game last year. I think they scored like 12. 16 in the second game that we got to see in person, Colton. Wow. It was wild. I was going to say, like, I was a little scared because George Kirby threw 2 pitches, gave up a run, right? Like, I was a little scared there, but the guys had his back in this one.
Yeah, the offensive explosion from the Seattle Mariners, definitely not something I saw coming, because how could you? Like, it feels like they scored more runs in this game they have all season. Every single guy in the lineup had a hit in this game. And before the game, Joe and I were kind of clowning on the bottom 3 of this lineup: Mitch Garver, Luis Urias, and Dylan Moore. Garver had 2 hits, Urias had 3 hits, and Dylan Moore had 2 hits.
They drove in 10 runs.
They combined for 10 of those 16 runs. So, if that's what it takes. It's also the first game where Jake Race-Trident wasn't watching. So someone blindfold that man and don't ever let him watch again. Yeah, George in this game did settle down a little bit. He struck out 9, did only give up 1 more earned run. JT Chargois gave up 1 run as well. Otherwise, Taylor Saucedo and Edward Bizardo and Jonathan Diaz got the job done the rest of the way. I mean, it was pretty much it was pretty much a done deal. I feel like
it's not hard to hold a 13. Yeah, it's not hard to hold a 13-run lead. I mean, sometimes, like, random stuff like that can happen. Sure, right? They were masquerading as the Royals in this one, but they weren't. You move back to 500 after that win, and you go into the final game, finishing up their 4-game set in Oakland for the final time. You've got Brian Wu, Bay Area kid, like, talking about all the pregame, like, oh, I used to go to, like, a bunch of A's games. Obviously grew up a Giants fan, but, like, was so close to Oakland. I think it's a very poetic end. Does well in this one. 5 innings, only 2 earned, 8 hits. Like, not great, but, like, for his standards specifically, but, like, that will get the job done. Strikes out 6. The Mariners offense gets started early on in this one. Cal Raleigh with a big 2-run bomb. Moving into second place all-time for home runs by a catcher in the first, was it 4 seasons?
Yep.
88 now, only 4 behind Mike Piazza. So also stole a base in this one, trying to go for Dan Wilson's single season record, or I think he's tied at the top for most stolen bases by a catcher, but a good game for the Mariners in this one. It was a little closer at the end. Thank God Luke Raley hit the home run in the top of the 9th, because Munoz didn't want to not go out there and not get a save. You know what I mean? There's a lot of double negatives in there, but gives up a home run to Brent Rooker. Final score of this one, I know you were sleeping most of it, was 6-4. You just got home. You were sleeping. You were taking a nap. I get it. Don't make that face.
I like nap from, like, the 6th inning to, like, the top of the 9th.
Oh, okay.
All right. I watched most of it. Thank you very much. And nothing changed, like, in that time frame.
Yeah, no.
So we're clear.
You picked a good time to nap.
Happened. Yeah. So yeah, Luke Raley had a big insurance run home run there in that not top of the 9th inning, and like you said, it did play a big role because Andres Munoz, who's struggled a little bit recently, kind of worried about that, especially with the talk that his arm might be fatiguing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a little worried, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. The Mariners were able to take this game 6-4, bringing their record in the Bay Area in this series 2-2. We said before this series, Joe, the Mariners need to go at least 3-1 if they want to have any hope at catching the Astros. or just winning or making the playoffs in general. With that being said, the Astros were swept
Mm-hmm.
by the Cincinnati Reds. So the Mariners find themselves 4.5 back of the division as it stands here on Thursday at 4 p.m. I think that I'm not ready to believe. I'm not. But every time this team just seems like, nah, nothing's going to happen, they just reel you right back in.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they are now what? One game over 500. They
Yep.
have 21 games the rest of the season. The only reason that I have any faith, Joe, that they can catch the Astros is because of that 3-game series. They have an opportunity to hold their fate in their own hands going into Houston in that last road series of the year before coming home and playing Oakland once again.
Yeah.
And I think because of that, and we've said this before, if the Mariners could find a way to be 3 back at that point, like no worse than 3 back when they go to Houston, I think the Mariners have a really good chance at this division as long as they can handle their business. Still a long way to go. They're 5 back in the wild card, but where do you sit in terms of playoff chances right now?
It's not great, right? Like I don't know what the Fangraphs percentage is right now, but I would say like it's probably around like a 1 in 10 chance. I feel like maybe less than that, honestly.
I want to say before today's game it was 6.9%.
Sure, nice. And so it probably went up after an Astros loss and a Mariners win. The Twins did win today. Royals did not play today, but they are currently 5 ahead of you. The Royals are. Twins are 5.5. They currently start a 3-game series on the 6th tomorrow. So hopefully one of them sweeps the other just to continue to allow the Mariners to potentially make up ground. I think something that is inspiring a little bit of confidence, it's not like a guarantee or anything, but Julio looks like he is starting to heat up a little bit. Whether or not it's just him getting his footing, feeling more comfortable. He had a 448-foot bomb in the final game against Oakland. Like, if there's one, like we've talked about it all year, when he goes, the offense goes. That's how your superstar player rolls. Like, sure, he hasn't looked like a superstar the entire year, but there's been glimpses. And I feel like when he's looked his best, the Mariners also kind of follow suit. And Cal having a big series in the second 2 games here does help that as well, right? Robles at the top of the lineup being a table setter with JP having a day off. Like, there were definitely things in the final game that I think should carry over going through the rest of the year. Like, I don't think JP should be in the leadoff spot. I think it should be Robles, then Julio, then Cal. I think that should be your top 3 in your lineup. Let JP kind of like get settled in at the bottom half and maybe turn the lineup over down there somewhere. But I don't know as far as like how positive I am that they'll be within 3 come that final Houston series. But if Julio's getting hot and the pitching stays consistent, with 21 games left, I mean, I'm not like, I don't know if I would have ever declared them dead unless they like got swept or mopped in Oakland kind of a thing. But like, they're 1 game over, and I know it's silly, but like, why not? And again, that first game that we went and saw, I literally declared to the camera, see you in 2025. Like, it's so fast that like how things can change. And I think if the offense can find some semblance of like fire, Luis Arias, if he's a random spark plug after going nuclear in that 3rd game against Oakland, like, great. Play him more. Give him more opportunity to show that he's worth it in some capacity. But do you have like something else to add on to like what could get them to that point?
Not really. I mean, obviously the Mariners are about to head to St. Louis, and the Astros are about to take on the Diamondbacks, who've been very, very good recently. I think that you have a chance in this upcoming series here to catch up a little bit more ground. I'm not going to say like you're going to magically sweep the Cardinals while the Diamondbacks sweep the Astros.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not gonna go out there and say that's gonna happen because frankly, it's the Mariners. I don't know what to expect out of this team anymore, and I don't think anybody should have any expectations the rest of the way. But with 21 games left, you're 4.5 back with that 3-game series coming up. You have to know that there is a chance. It's by the slimmest of margins, the absolute slimmest of margins, but you have a chance going into the final couple weeks of this season. 21 games left to fix all the wrong that you've done, because you again, we've talked about this before. You look last year at the Texas Rangers after like the All-Star break, they sucked. They were a bad baseball team, but they got hot at the very end of the season and they found their way into winning the World Series last year. That's just what happened. And could the Mariners do that? Sure. Joe, you talked a little bit before the podcast about how the Diamondbacks on this date last year were the first team out of the wild card spot. Granted, they were only like a game and a half back.
I think they were the second spot. Like they were one game back, and the Marlins were a half game better than them. But like still, like they were on the outside looking in with 3 weeks left to play. It's just their gap that they have to make up is significantly less. Although there is some scheduled like favor, like a little bit of like favoritism for the Mariners. Like I think it's the Twins and the Royals are playing, like we said, and I think the Twins and the Red Sox play each other. We're a half game ahead of the Red Sox now. Like if the Royals sweep the Twins and then the Red Sox and Twins like Red Sox win 2 out of 3 or something, like that could maybe let the Mariners catapult the Twins in some capacity, right? It's just like, how much do we trust this team to put themselves in a position to allow other teams that lose to help them out?
The hard part is we have to rely on other teams now. The Mariners had the chance to take care of business and not have to rely on other teams to win or lose throughout the rest of the season, which we've seen over the past couple of years. I think 2021 is a prime example. I remember being at the ballpark. It was Kyle Seager's last game. That was like the big storyline. But also, I think it was like the Mariners playing the Angels. If they were to win that game and then like the Orioles were to lose or something like that, I don't remember exactly what it was. Then the Mariners would have had it. They had a chance to make the playoffs that day. They missed out on the playoffs by 1 game. But I think that the Orioles won, and therefore the Mariners didn't make it, and they knew that prior to the end of the game. So at that point, nobody cared. Like, it's just unfortunate. The Mariners have put themselves in a position where they have to rely on other teams, but that's just where we are right now because the Mariners didn't play good baseball against teams they should have played good baseball against. Like, there are so many. It's so easy to pick and choose certain games where, like, oh, if the Mariners would have done what they should have done in this series, specifically the Angels or the Tigers, then they would be right there. The Mariners, I don't think they should be leading this division, but they should at least be tied based on the games that we've seen them play. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And like you said, with the teams like the Twins and the Royals playing each other quite a bit, we need one of those teams to just absolutely beat the crap out of the other one. That just has to happen for them if they want to make the wild card. That is. And the Mariners need to keep taking care of business. You have to win the series versus the Cardinals coming up, in my opinion. It's a must-win series. If you can sweep, obviously, that's fantastic. We talked about it a little bit. The Mariners, and I think I saw this on Twitter, the Mariners over 2022 and 2023 had big win streaks, right? We look at 2022, they had the 14-game win streak. We look at 2023, they had the 20-win August. It hasn't happened in 2024. I don't know what their longest win streak is, maybe like 6.
I don't think so. I think it's 5.
Is it 5?
If even that.
Yeah. And so 21 games left. Can you go on a nice little win streak here and, find yourself winners of 8, 9, 10 in a row? Because if you can, then you have I will at that point declare them back. If they can go on an 8, 9, 10 game win streak and be like a game or 2 back at the Astros, I will say, yeah, I'm all in again. Like I'm ready to get hurt again. But as of right now, I'm not ready to give myself the opportunity to get hurt by this team again.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 games against the Athletics, a team that you should have beat the previous 2 where you lost. Like, this series should not have been a split, right? Like, I understand people like being like, yeah, I'm still kind of like removed from like the actual outcome and just here to kind of like vibe out. And I mean, it was fun to just be able to vibe. Even in the loss, I mean, it kind of sucked, but like the loss was painful. But being able to just kind of like remove yourself from it definitely is something that, understandably so, a lot of people are doing right now to not get their feelings hurt. Colton, someone, transitions go crazy, that got their feelings hurt. What? So, Scott Service got his feelings hurt. Understandably so, right?
Yeah.
And were you not done?
No, I was done. This is a hell of a transition. Keep going.
I don't know how else we were going to transition to it. He got his information leaked that he was fired, essentially. It was leaked to Ken Rosenthal, and Mr. Ryan Divish was on Puck's show, on his podcast, and basically was kind of like laying out like who it could have been. Not like confirming anything, not really denying anything, but basically saying where my conversations have led is that it came from ownership. And There's then okay, who are the two faces of the two names that are applied to ownership primarily? It's Chris Larson and it's John Stanton. And a lot of people say, I mean, Puck in that segment was basically like, we don't even know what Chris Larson looks like these days. Like, he could just be a random guy in Seattle. We have no idea. Whereas like John Stanton is like primarily like the face, like the sponge for the ownership group, deservedly so. And I don't know, the fact that there's these like rumblings and like information getting leaked from the like from the upper front office, like the ownership group, it's just so, especially like in the heat of the end of the season where like you're trying to remove as many distractions as possible, having that situation play out like it did, and then that leak being potentially ownership is such a bad look from just like the overall like organization standpoint. Like, we already knew it was bad. We already know that like people don't really respect Seattle, I think, as an organization across like not even just like West Coast versus East Coast bias, but like there are teams on the West Coast that get respected. The Mariners are not one of them. And have they really earned it? Not necessarily, but this is just continuing to just kind of like sandbag the reputation with Depoto's like not out of pocket, but like the misconstrued 54% stuff, like other things with like previous players, Cameron Maben going on foul territory, dragging Scott. Like, it's just has not been a good 2-3 year stretch for the Mariners in the media. If it was Stanton or Larson, I mean, that's whatever the point lies to, is like, it doesn't matter at this point, like either one of them, but it's just like, yeah, where do you go from there as an owner? Because like eventually it's going to be, you're going to figure it out, like who did it.
What a joke of an organization this we have seen the Seattle Mariners become over the last couple of years specifically. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of instances, like especially in the Dipoto era, which sucks because I do like the way that he builds baseball teams and especially in the draft department. But in terms of how he handles people, it's not good. With that being said, however, it sounds like all indications are pointing to the fact that this was ownership, because Divish said that he's hearing it from sources throughout the league that it was leaked by ownership, someone in the ownership group. It leads me to believe, I don't know how in tune Chris Larson is with the Mariners. I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who the hell this guy is. John Stanton is generally at every Mariners game, right? Like, he knows Scott personally. Like, I don't know if Chris Larson's ever spoken a word to Scott Service. I don't know. And so the fact that it could be Chris Larson that leaked it to Ken Rosenthal, to me, it seems unlikely, because why would Ken Rosenthal be calling Chris Larson when we as Mariners fans don't even know who this dude is?
Sure.
Like, the face and the chairman is and has been John Stanton for as long as I can remember, since like 2013 or something like that. And man, it's just, I don't know why John Stanton would do that. I have no idea, but who else at ownership could have leaked? I mean, was it Griffey?
That's why he was that's why he was in the booth.
He
in
was
Oakland.
in the booth in Oakland. Yeah,
he's trying to make amends.
I don't know if I'm ever gonna be putting this headset on again. Is what he was gonna say. But yeah, I mean, just what an absolute joke. And it sucks because we as Mariners fans have to continuously endure this, where we love this baseball team. I love pretty much everyone on this team. And the fact is that every single day we have to worry that we're going to go on Twitter and see some more crap from the front office, the ownership group, sometimes even the players. And it's like, they find new ways to kick us in the teeth that we never thought possible. You know, I think that over the past, calendar year specifically, the 54% thing, the we're doing you a favor thing, obviously the stuff about Stanton pulling the money back from during the offseason, this, like the whole Kevin Mather situation years ago, the Lorena Martin situation, like the Mariners continue to find a way every single year to have bad publicity, bad press. And it begins and ends with the people that own this team. It always does. It is a top-down problem. And I don't know, there's unfortunately nothing we can do about it. Like, we could say, oh, fire Jerry Dipoto, great. But you still have the people that, I mean, Mather was a member of ownership. Like, you still have the people that own stakes in this team continuing to be just POS of people. POS is they're bad people, guys. Like, the owners of the Seattle Mariners are not great people. And it sucks to see that as we find ourselves in a playoff race, as we see a long tenured Mariners manager, second longest tenured Mariners manager in history, second winningest manager in Mariners history. And this is how everything goes down. He's disrespected. There were allegedly now problems with Scott too. Like, we heard it from
Maben,
from Cameron Maben. We heard it from Casey Sadler.
Like a slight bit, right?
Right, yeah. And it's like, so don't get me wrong, Scott's not innocent in all of this. But at the same time, he was, I mean, there's been plenty of talk about how the player, he wasn't as well respected as maybe we thought he was.
Sure.
And there were certain guys, you know, like JP and him were great friends. Like, JP really respected Scott's service. But we've heard, and this could all just be just, you know, all a big load of nothing. I don't want to make this bigger than it is. But like, and specifically the two quotes between JP when he heard that Scott got fired, he was like, "Oh man, like, you know, I love Scott, blah blah, slapped to the face, whatever it was he said." Or like Victor Robles, who had really high praises of Scott. But then you hear Julio, and it's like Julio and Scott didn't always see eye to eye. I think it was Divish that said on Locked On's interview with him that like Scott was really hard on Julio, and Julio didn't like that, like how hard Scott was on him. And like when you look at Julio's quote about Scott, he was like, "I just want to focus on playing baseball right now."
Yeah.
You know, and which I think is the right response. You have to look at where the team's at. Like, you have to focus on making it to the playoffs right now. But it's like from the top down of this organization, it's like there's a disease in there. And the only way out of it is to start winning. That's the only way out of all of this. And don't get me wrong, that does not, even if the Mariners all of a sudden go out there and win the World Series for the next 5 years, that does not excuse what the ownership, what the front office have done, put their team through, put the fans through, put the city through over the past few years. But the only way to fix it is to do well the next few years. And just, I don't want to hear a peep about organization or about from the organization about anything. We're focused on winning. That's all I want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I want to hear out of John Stanton's mouth. Yeah, no, you guys can have the payroll. That's all I want to hear. Don't utter another word.
And I think what you're saying is, like, if they do go out and win, whatever, it doesn't excuse them. Unfortunately, that will be the biggest excuse for them ever. Is like, oh, look, the thing that, like, actually, like, turned around, like, it worked. And, you know, Rangers last year, bought not built. They're not great this year. Injury concern. It doesn't matter. Like, there will always be some sort of narrative that can be spun to either paint something in a negative light or paint something in a positive light. If the Mariners go out there and lose the rest of the way, then yes, that will be bad for the ownership. I'd say, I guess, good for the fans that are vocal about wanting some sort of ownership change. But, like, as far as, like, a fan base is concerned, like, I don't want to watch the team lose. But, like, also, like, if I'm watching them win, then I'm supporting the owner. Like, it's just, like, such a double-edged sword that, like you're saying, like, it's a stain. Just, if we could somehow get, I think you said it while you were here, like, the Phillies owner, bro, that just cares. Having someone that genuinely cares. And the comment you made about Stanton, he's at all the games. Like, it seems like he cares about baseball at least a little bit. I don't know where that disconnect is as far as, like, you're, like, I assume. I mean, he's a multi-millionaire. I don't want to maybe put the B on John Stanton's name there, right? $1 billion. But, like, bro's got the cash to really figure it out and, like, somehow funnel it into the team. We know that. Then just do it. And make this team, like, the well-respected team that you probably want to be the owner for. You don't want to be known as the owner of, like, some stain in baseball. You want, like... Maybe I'm dumb. Maybe the passion isn't there. Maybe it is strictly money because they're a businessman. Like, that's what it is, right? It's all about the money. Cash rules everything around me. Blah, blah, blah. Right? That's the problem. Money's the root of all evil. Baseball, they should just become a non-profit. And they'll become a non-profit, and the sport, the sanctity of the sport will be saved completely.
It sucks that we sit here on September 5th in the year of our Lord and Savior, Cal Raleigh, 2024. And we have to talk about this stuff when you're 4.5 games out of a playoff spot. It's just stupid, man. And as we transition now, because transitions go crazy, like you said, to a St. Louis Cardinals team, Joe, that has been pretty bad over the past calendar year or so. a team that has a lot of star power, but a team that might be aging out. I think that the Mariners have a chance to make up some of that ground that they have on the Houston Astros, and it all starts tomorrow.
Yeah, the team that's been bad for 71-69 on the year, half game better than our Seattle Mariners.
Mariners have been bad.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their team. Ryan Helsley, I think, has been their saving grace, pun intended. Second best closer in all of baseball. They've got a negative 54 run differential. Not that that tells like an entire story. Their expected win-loss would put them at 12 games under. But because Ryan Helsley has been locked down, I think he's leading the league in saves. Like, and Jojo Romero's been great. Andrew Kittredge has been great. Like, their pitching in their bullpen specifically has taken them a long way. And you're talking about them aging out. I mean, you look at their free agent signings in the offseason. Sonny Gray, 34-year-old signing. Kyle Gibson, 36. Like, Miles Michaelis, not a signing, but bro's 36. You've got a lot of aging players. I know you were mainly talking about the superstars, old stars of the previous decade of Goldschmidt and Arenado, whether or not some of their young guns like Walker will ever figure it out. Alec Burleson is having a great year. Will Mason Wynn achieve some sort of offensive, will he reach that level of offensive capacity? Because we what he can give you on defense. It's just like, will he not turn into the next Ozzie Smith, right? Defensive wonder class. Maybe Andrelton Simmons is a better comparison. I don't know if I can compare Mason Wynn to the Wizard, but I don't know. This Cardinals team, it's sneaky. I think there's some sneaky pop that they could run into something. I mean, they just swept the Yankees. They're 6-4 their last 10, but game 1, we've got Bryce Miller off on the road, we know blah blah blah. I'm tired of talking about home road splits. Bryce Miller, he's a good pitcher. He's got a 3.3 ERA on the year. He can go out there and shove against the Cardinals in St. Louis. He's opposite their trade deadline acquisition, Eric Fetty, in this one, who is having a great year coming back from the KBO. Obviously started with the White Sox. I like this series as the closing of a 10-game road trip because I think looking at the first two, we know how well the Mariners have played against poor teams this year, and the answer is not great. The way that the final 2 games against the Athletics have looked, I feel better about this team going into St. Louis when they've played against teams that are better a little bit more competitively. Not to say that 71-69 is this crowning achievement. I mentioned their run differential. They're probably overachieving record-wise, but this team I'd say is better on paper than the Athletics and the Angels, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to turn up the notch a little bit, go in there, go into St. Louis, and you said you have to take this series. I mean, that puts you at 500 on this road trip if you win 2 out of 3. You have to go at least 2 out of 3 in this one to finish 500 on this 10-game road trip. Do you have any thoughts about Fetty versus Miller in that one?
I mean, it's the best in terms of pitchers you're going to face in this series.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who's having the best year.
Yeah.
And I think the Mariners did all right against him. The last time they faced him, he was with the White Sox. I don't have the numbers pulled up, but
yeah.
Overall, I think that with Bryce Miller on the mound, he continues to kind of fight the allegations lately of road Miller compared to home Miller. He's been quite good, honestly, on the road recently. And Bryce Miller's a guy that I trust quite a bit going into a series against the St. Louis Cardinals where their offense, like I said, Goldschmidt's having a down year. Arenado's having a down year. They already traded away Dylan Carlson. That was the guy who was very much in the plans for the Cardinals over the past few years. He just didn't pan out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, like I said, this is a team that is aging out, and over the next few years, they are going to find their way. When you're the Cardinals, you don't rebuild. You're the St. Louis freaking Cardinals. You try to find yourself in contention every single year. But this team, the path forward for them is a strange one because they do have a lot of aging veterans. So I think that the Mariners, a team that has a lot of young guys with some aging veterans, but a lot of young guys that have a chance to be here for a few more years, should be able to take advantage of this team. Going into game 2, Joe, going up against another guy that was signed in the offseason, Kyle Gibson, old man Gibby in this game. I think the Mariners should be able to take advantage of him before they get into the final game as well. I like the Mariners' chances offensively after what we've seen the last 2 games versus the Athletics. But tell me more about the pitching matchup in game 2.
Well, it's Kyle Gibson, Emerson Hancock of the previous generation, versus Logan Gilbert, who, I mean, he's going to pass 200 strikeouts this year pretty safely. He's at 181 right now. He's probably got, what, 4 more starts left? Something close to that. 7-10 record on the year just has not favored the decisions there, but when you're chucking quality starts and the team can't score runs, that's what's going to happen. You got a 3.19 ERA. Logan Gilbert has still been your best pitcher the entire year. Him going up against St. Louis, a middle-of-the-road team in terms of team WRC+, they're at a 97. I think the Mariners are a 98 now. And then team ERA, I think they're at a 4.19. Like, ERA obviously doesn't affect Gilbert's odds there, but like Gilbert going up against a middling offense, I feel pretty good about it. And you're going up against Kyle Gibson, who's not going to overpower you, probably going to be in or around the zone. Like, it's a guy that you should be able to go in there and be like, yeah, all right, we know how to handle Kyle Gibson. I looked at their bullpen ERA compared to their, not just like compared to their starter ERA, but their bullpen ERA is top 6 in all of baseball. When I said like their complete team ERA is, I think, 19th. So their starters, they're not going to really overmatch you. And I think that you need to take advantage of that in this one, because if you get down, like if you're down late in this game and you have to somehow scratch a run off of Jojo Romero or Ryan Helsley, it's like you're not going to have a good time. And for the final game, Luis Castillo, I'd say he pitched pretty well against Oakland. He's up against Miles Michaelis, who's got an ERA over 5. Like, this is rinse and repeat. Mariners have a pitching advantage. Will they be able to score runs? Will the bullpen be able to hold it down if Munoz isn't fully healthy? Colin Snyder had another scoreless outing this time. Troy Taylor looked great. There's things that I think are starting to piece together in the pen, but like I'm not nearly as confident as I have been in 2022 or 2023 for obvious reasons, right? Like there's not as much, I think, like firepower back there right now. And it's unfortunate that Garcia got injured, Santos got injured, Brash obviously out for the year, but I like the chance in this one to at least win 2 out of 3, Colton. How are you feeling about final game with Castillo versus Miles Michaelis?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. You have to get at the starting pitchers. You have to, because the bullpen for the Cardinals has been their real strength. And like you said, I don't remember what you said the stat was for them, but overall, you get to the back end of that bullpen, and if the Cardinals have a lead, you're not taking it back. And so I think if the Mariners can get out there and get ahead of, Fetty early in game 1 or Gibson early or Michaelis early in these couple of games, I think the Mariners do have a decent chance here. Again, I am a little worried about Andres Munoz right now. He has not looked sharp recently, and to find out that he's been dealing with some elbow soreness does scare me a little bit. I would honestly be shocked if we see him in back-to-back days, maybe even for the rest of the season, unless of course it's absolutely necessary, like in like an Astro series or something like that. But the Mariners as a whole going into this series, you said it, that if they take 2 of 3, they go 500. We said for this road trip, ideally you need to go 6-4, 7-3. They can't go 7-3 anymore. They really need to sweep. Like they can win 2 out of 3 in this series versus the Cardinals, but frankly, because they didn't take care of business versus the Angels, they didn't take care of business versus the Athletics, you really need a sweep of the Cardinals to kind of keep pace here. But again, the Astros are facing the Arizona Diamondbacks. We already talked about the guys in front of you in the wild card. They all have some tough series going on right now. Maybe the Mariners get lucky and the Astros keep losing. They've lost 3 in a row now after winning 4 in a row versus the Royals. So maybe somehow, some way, the Mariners get lucky and winning 2 out of 3 puts them still like 3 games back or something like that of the Astros. I highly doubt that's going to happen. Again, I really want to see them sweep this series, as I'm sure everybody does, because then I'll be sucked right back in, and I'm so ready to get hurt again, baby. That's going to do it for us here on episode 119 of the Hit It Here podcast, then by Bet Online, the Luke Burger King episode of the podcast, and go Mariners.